Exposed, my billionaire birth parents thought I came to beg, then my incredible daughter entered. Emily stood outside the grand ballroom where her fate awaited her, heart pounding like a bass drum in a symphony. This was the moment she had dreamed of, but never like this. Her fingers trembled, clutching her daughter Sophie's tiny hand. Memories of the Ashford diner, with its greasy countertops and everyday din, clung to her like an old coat. But tonight was different. Tonight, she was walking into the lion's den, a far cry from the warmth of her little world. Inside, laughter echoed against the crystal chandeliers. Men in tailored suits and women in dazzling gowns floated like sea creatures in a vibrant ocean of wealth. Emily felt small, a mere pebble amid diamonds. But the shadows of the past clung to her. Those very people, her wealthy birth parents, had once cast her aside, choosing affluence over flesh and blood. Determination surged through her chest. This was not about the riches she was denied, but about the love she had fiercely cultivated for Sophie. "Sophie, you ready?" she whispered, brushing a hair out of her daughter's bright eyes. "Mom, it's just a party." Sophie giggled, wielding her innocence like a shield. As they entered, Emily braced herself. Conversations dulled, and curious eyes turned their way. Whispers began, a chorus of speculation and judgment swirling around them, echoing her insecurities. Yet, her daughter, her beautiful, gifted daughter, remained unbothered. Sophie's confidence filled the air, sparking delight even from the most discerning onlookers. Emily's heart swelled with pride but was soon punctured with the sharp realization of her own feelings of unworthiness. She eyed her parents across the room, their perfect smiles hiding secrets that threatened to unravel her very being. The resentment she bore became a tight knot in her stomach. They thought she had come to beg. But no, she had built a life filled with love, struggling for every inch while they danced in their gilded existence. Before the night's tension could swallow her whole, Sophie took center stage, standing tall before the crowd. Her small frame seemed impossibly brave. "I want to tell you all something," she began, her voice capturing attention like a spotlight. Words flowed from her like a melody, talking of family and love, about the bond they shared despite the distances. Her innocence pierced through the walls of wealth and neglect. Everyone in that room felt it, the shame, the warmth, the flickering hope. Even Emily's heart lightened as tears pricked her eyes, but in that moment, Emily felt her own facade cracking. Could she forgive? Accept? It was much easier to dwell on what shouldn't have been. Then, startling revelations hit her. Her parents had faced their struggles too, hidden under the weight of their own hardships, tangled in the same web of regrets that ensnared her. The air turned electric, as whispers surrounded her. Hope hung, fragile yet fierce. This was more than an encounter, it was a call to redefine their fractured family. As Sophie's words began stitching the wound with raw love, Emily's heart remained heavy with unanswered questions. Would she, ever embrace this truth? Before they could grasp the full impact of her daughter's wisdom, a flickering promise remained. Perhaps healing could be born from understanding a truth that lay just on the horizon. But as the night surged forward, the question lingered: could Emily truly learn to forgive the past, or would the weight of her unfulfilled childhood crush her spirit once again? Emily felt the room shift with Sophie's words, an electric hum that filled the air. The initial whispers turned into intensity, like a collective breath held in anticipation. Her daughter was magic, unaware of the tidal wave she was creating with her innocent declaration. For a moment, it felt like Emily and Sophie were the only two souls afloat in the sea of wealth and judgment. But that feeling was fleeting. As the crowd's reactions became more palpable, Emily's heart raced. Curiosity morphed into something sharper, more dangerous. She spotted her mother whispering to a woman draped in pearls, her expression a blend of incredulity and disdain. Would they be able to look past their judgments? Could this actually become something genuine? "Mom, can I say more?" Sophie interrupted her thoughts, breaking into her trance. Emily nodded, her throat tight. "Of course, sweetheart." Sophie took a deep breath, her cheeks flushed with determination. "I know things haven't always been perfect, but I love my mom and that's what matters." With those simple words, Sophie became a lighthouse for Emily's turbulent emotions. Light burst into focus, illuminating the tangled relationship she had with her birth parents. Inside, bitterness clashed with yearning. Could acceptance feel like freedom? With every word Sophie delivered, Emily felt layers of resentment weathered like chalk against rough stone. The crowd began to murmur, and suddenly, a man stepped forward, his frown deepening as he addressed Sophie. "And what about your grandparents? They abandoned your mother. Why should we listen to you?" Gasps erupted around the room. Emily's heart sank, the room closing in around her. She squeezed Sophie's hand, wishing to shield her daughter from the harsh realities she couldn't understand. The laughter they were once surrounded by turned into a murmur of backhanded comments and forced politeness. But Sophie stood firm, undeterred. Because love is bigger than anger. It's more powerful than mistakes. Just like I love my mom, I want my grandparents to be a part of my life. Her voice cut through the air like a dagger. Emily felt a surge of pride but also fear. What would this honesty cost them? Would it push her parents further away or bring them closer? Soft murmurs shifted like wind echoes, and Emily watched her mother's expression falter. The facade cracked. There was a flicker of something. Was it recognition? Regret? Suddenly, the ballroom felt alive again. Eyes darted back and forth, weighing and measuring. It was a battle of perceptions, a collective turning point sparked by Sophie's brave heart. Emily inhaled sharply, and in that breath, she realized something profound. Sophie was right. "Can we leave soon?" Sophie whispered, her small hand tightening around Emily's. "Just a bit longer, okay? I think we need to stay." Sophie nodded, though confusion danced in her eyes. As Emily grappled with her emotions, she saw her mother across the room, visibly shaken. The crumbling walls of decades-long resentment began to fold inward, perhaps giving way to connection, vulnerability, and acceptance. As they stood in the spotlight's glow, Emily sensed a shift. The atmosphere was pregnant with possibilities. New beginnings were on the horizon. But in the depths of her heart, uncertainty lingered like a shadow. Would she step forward into the unknown and embrace the chance of reconciliation? Or would she allow the past's weight to define their future? As the night wore on, Emily could only cling to one truth: courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means stepping into it with the hope of healing. But just as she opened her heart, a voice from the back of the room sliced through the complexity of the moment. "I need to speak to you, Emily." The words ignited a swirl of dread, and Emily turned to find the very last person she expected standing before her, a figure shadowed in uncertainty, but wearing the unmistakable signature of her past. Emily's heart raced. The voice lingered in her ears, curling around her fears like a serpent. She turned slowly, half expecting to see a ghost. Instead, her breath caught in her throat when she met the cautious gaze of Claire, her estranged sister. The years between them felt like a chasm. Surging emotions enveloped her, a mix of anger, disappointment, and an aching need for understanding. "Claire," she managed, her voice wavering. "What are you doing here? I need to talk to you." Claire's voice was low, almost hesitant, as if the very act of asking could shatter something delicate. Sophie, her innocent spirit untempered by the complexities of adult wounds, tugged at Emily's hand. "Mom, do you know her?" "Yes, sweetheart," Emily whispered, feeling the weariness of her past seeping back into the present. "This is your aunt." Sophie looked up at Claire, eyes wide with curiosity. "You're my mom's sister? But why haven't I met you before?" The weight of Sophie's question felt like a thunderclap in the air. Emily glanced at Claire, who could only manage a shrug. The years of silence suddenly loomed like a thick fog, heavy and suffocating. "I'm sorry, Sophie," Emily said softly, kneeling beside her daughter. "There are reasons, complicated ones." "Complicated? Or unfair?" Sophie's young voice shook with the confidence of innocence. She crossed her arms, glancing between her mother and Claire, her small brow furrowing. "Adults make things so complicated, don't they?" Emily could only smile at her daughter's insight, even as uncertainty danced in her own heart. This was not how the night was supposed to unfold. "I just wanted to see you," Claire finally said, her gaze steady on Emily. I know we have history. But I thought maybe it was time to try again. Try again? Emily echoed, the bitterness bubbling up like oil on water. After all these years? You just show up at a party and think we can just pick up where we left off? I didn't mean to intrude. Claire's voice rose slightly, panic coursing through her as eyes turned toward them. I thought maybe we could talk privately. Emily hesitated. Something about Claire's presence stirred memories of laughter and sisterhood they once shared, but those days seemed distant, like a faded photograph. On the other hand, Sophie stood there, witnessing their clash, her future still unwritten. Okay, Emily finally breathed. But we can't do this here. Sophie, how about we find some juice and sit down for a moment? Can I get some cupcakes too? Sophie asked, her small face lighting up. Emily nodded, heart warmed by her daughter's innocence. They made their way to the refreshment table, as Claire followed closely behind. Emily busied herself pouring drinks, trying to weigh the weight of so many emotions. As she filled Sophie's cup, Claire's voice broke through her thoughts. I'm trying to change, Emily. I didn't realize how bad we had it, didn't realize. Emily shot back, the words laced with a mix of disbelief and pain. You pretended everything was fine while I struggled. I know, Claire said, and this time her voice carried an edge of remorse. And I'm sorry for that. But I've grown up. I've learned. Sophie watched them, the tension thick as the air around them crackled with unspoken truths. Just then, a muffled giggle broke through from another table where guests were gathering, giving a brief reprieve from the heaviness that clung to them. Mom, Sophie said quietly, looking up with wise eyes, is it okay to forgive? In that fragile moment, the enormity of the question hung between them, as potent as their shared history. Emily felt her heart swell with pride for her daughter's innocence and resolve. Would forgiveness open the door to healing and a greater love? Or was it simply an illusion of hope wrapped in the complexities of their past? Before she could answer, Claire turned, her expression earnest. What if we could be a family again, Em? What if we just took one step toward rebuilding trust? Emily bit her lip, caught between hope and heartbreak. The weight of the promise was vast, but deep inside, a flicker of possibility dared to rise, but just as she decided to respond, a loud crash echoed through the ballroom. They all turned, the vibrant distractions of the party forgotten as anticipation hung in the air. Who or what could disrupt this moment? Emily's pulse quickened. She was bracing for the unexpected after the unexpected. What if this moment changed everything again? The crash reverberated through the room, shattering the fragile tension that had settled around Emily, Claire, and Sophie. Heads turned, shocked expressions plastered on the faces of the party's guests. Emily's heart thudded against her ribs, a wild drumbeat urging her to take charge, but uncertainty gripped her like ice. What was that? Sophie asked, her innocent curiosity juxtaposing the unease swirling in the room. Emily forced a smile, trying to shield her daughter from the chaos that threatened to unfold. Let us just grab those cupcakes, okay? It might just be some party decor falling over. But the muffled voices had turned to whispers, and like a wave, everyone moved toward the source of the noise. Emily felt the pull, her instincts tugging her closer to the crowd, despite the knot in her stomach. Claire's grip on her arm was firm but uncertain. I'll go check, Claire offered, stepping toward the group. Emily hesitated, the urge to protest bubbling beneath the surface. At that moment, Claire seemed like the only link to something familiar, something that might help her navigate this confusion. No. Emily blurted, the words spilling out before she thought. She steadied her breath, scanning the mingling guests, desperately searching for some sense of grounding. Just let us stay together, Emily breathed, recalling what could happen when they stood apart. Every glance exchanged and every moment of silence felt like echoes of their past, the shared heartbreak that had built an invisible wall. With a nod, Claire fell back, and they fell into step beside Sophie, who clutched a plastic cupcake in each hand, blissfully unaware of the storm that hung overhead. What if it's a surprise? Sophie chimed, her eyes sparkling, excitement warming the air around them. Or an accident, Claire countered, trying to match Sophie's optimism. But before they could delve deeper into an imaginative discussion, the crowd parted, and a figure emerged. A woman, tall and confident, with sharp features and an air that commanded attention. Her dark dress hugged her form, contrasting sharply against the shimmering decorations of the party. Emily's breath hitched as the woman's gaze swept the room, finally landing on Claire then her. "Claire!" the woman shouted. Her voice rang out clear, a thunderclap piercing through the remaining chatter. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you." Emily's heart raced. The air shifted, every guest holding their breath. Who was she? Claire's face turned pale. "Mom?" she whispered, shock and disbelief flooding her voice, making her seem like a child again. Emily felt the ground shift beneath her. Their shared past suddenly felt surreal, and the woman must have sensed it, for she strode toward them, powerful and unyielding, every step precise. "Yes, darling. I've come to explain everything," the woman said, her gaze unwavering as she reached Claire. "And to see you both." Sophie, oblivious to the sudden escalation, looked between the two women, eyes wide with confusion, and gripped her mother's leg tighter. "Mom, who is she?" The woman's smile was almost apologetic, but there was a fire behind her eyes, a fierce determination that felt almost tangible. "We need to talk, Emily. I know this isn't the right place, but it can't wait any longer." Emily's mind raced. The drama unfolding in the ballroom felt like one more layer to the already tangled web of their lives. But what if this was the moment Claire had been waiting for? Just as she opened her mouth to respond, Sophie's small voice broke through again, shifting the tone of impending confrontation. "Can we at least all have cupcakes first?" Laughter erupted briefly, tension dispersing like mist in the morning sun. But Emily knew this was just a pause, a brief breath before the real storm hit. As she looked at Claire and the unfamiliar woman, a chill ran down her spine. The question loomed larger than life. Were they ready to confront the truths waiting just below the surface? Emily felt a tightening in her chest. This was just the beginning. What new revelations awaited? She steadied her breath, bracing for the roller coaster still ahead. Emily's heart whirred in her chest, a rapid succession of thoughts drowned out by the laughter still echoing around them. She glanced from Claire to the woman who had just re-entered their lives, then down at Sophie, who now anxiously bounced on her heels, eyes glimmering with the hope of more cupcakes. Let us sit over there," Emily finally managed, pointing toward a quieter corner of the room. She didn't want Sophie to feel the weight of this moment. Claire's expression was unreadable, teetering between disbelief and curiosity that burned brightly in her eyes. "Mom," Claire finally said, urgency threading through her voice. My real mom? Is that really you?" "Claire," the woman said softly, reaching out. "It's a long story, but yes, it's me. It's been too long, and I have so much to tell you." Emily felt the air grow thick with anticipation. Could this stranger really be the woman who had once been a part of their lives, who had left so many unanswered questions in her wake? As Claire hesitated, Emily watched, searching for the nervousness in her daughter's posture. She found it. Claire's tightly crossed arms were giving away the storms raging inside her. "What happened? Why now?" Claire asked, her voice trembling slightly. The woman took a deep breath, her features softening, as if she was seeing her daughter clearly for the first time in years. "It's not what you think, Claire. I was young, scared, and I didn't know how to be a mother. But I have always loved you. I had to leave, and I regret it deeply." Sophie stood, oblivious to the intensity of their exchanges, clutching her treasure of cupcakes like a peace offering. "Can we be a family now? With cupcakes?" she chirped, her innocence slicing through the tension in the air like a breath of fresh spring. Emily couldn't help but smile at Sophie, the little beacon of joy in the chaos. But her glance back at Claire and the woman reminded her that this was about more than dessert. "It's not just about cupcakes, sweetheart," she said gently, trying to capture Sophie's innocence without tainting it with heavy emotions. "This is about people, relationships, things we need to understand. The woman nodded. I know it's overwhelming. Can you give me just a few moments? I want to explain why I had to leave, and how I've thought of you every day. Claire looked torn, her spirit battling between wanting to reject this woman and the longing for in-depth answers that lay just out of reach. But how could you? She whispered, rawness seeping into her tone. You just left like we didn't matter. The woman's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I made terrible choices. Choices that I now see were wrong. But I want to make things right, Claire. I want to help you understand. It doesn't just work like that, Claire shot back, a sudden confidence igniting her. What if we don't want to know you? What if I don't want a mother who left? The tension thickened again as silence wrapped around them, the sounds of the party fading like distant thunder. Emily felt a rush of protectiveness over Claire. What if they were about to open up a wound that was best left healed? Yet deep down, she understood that sometimes healing required facing the raw and painful truths. Let's just talk, Emily started to say, navigating this new territory. She felt the strains of the moment pressing her down, but also knew they were standing on the brink of something vital. Talk. Sophie said, her sweet voice bubbling to the surface, light and cheerful despite the intensity wrapping around them. Can we talk while we eat cupcakes? I like it when we talk about special things over cupcakes. Emily looked at her daughter, who had an uncanny way of bringing things back to life, even when shadows loomed close. A flicker of hope surged within her. Cupcakes first. The woman chuckled softly, moisture glistening in her eyes. How could I refuse that? But just as they leaned deeper into conversation, a commotion erupted from the other side of the ballroom. In that instant, a chorus of gasps echoed through the space, pulling their attention away from everything else. Emily's heart raced again. What new chaos awaited them now? Would they ever sit down and bake that elusive truth into cupcakes? As the crowd surged forward, Emily felt the knot in her stomach tighten once more. Reality was waiting to unleash itself, but at what cost? The commotion brewed into a storm of panic, voices rising with urgency as people rushed toward the commotion. Emily caught sight of a group of guests gathering at the far end of the ballroom. Murmurs rippled through the air like an electric current. Her heart thudded in her chest, and she instinctively stepped closer to Claire and Sophie, wanting to shield her girls from whatever chaos was unfolding. Mom, what is happening? Claire asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. I don't know, Emily replied, feeling her own heart race. What if it's something bad? Claire's gaze drifted to the growing crowd, her protective instincts igniting as she instinctively took Sophie's hand. Before Emily could comfort her or offer reassurance, the crowd erupted in a new round of gasps. A burly man pushed through the throng, his face flushed, hands outstretched as if to maintain order. Call the police. He shouted, his voice booming above the murmurs that now sent their pressure over to Emily and the rest, curling like smoke around them. Police? Claire echoed, her eyes darting nervously. Just then, the woman Claire's mother took a step back, her face pale as if she was reliving a nightmare. I need to go, she stammered, fear creeping into her voice. Wait. Claire's eyes widened. You can't leave like this. Not now. The woman paused, her expression a blend of terror and longing, hesitating as she looked at Claire. I need to find out what is going on. I'll be right back, she promised, taking a few tentative steps backward, her hand lingering in the air. Grasping at the air, Emily felt panic rising. They were just moments ago, on the brink of reconnecting, only to be thrown into this unexpected chaos. Claire, stay close to me and Sophie. She squeezed her daughter's shoulder. Whatever happens next, we will face it together. Sophie, still clutching her cupcakes, looked up at her mother, confusion etched across her young features. Mommy, is this like in the movies? Where the bad guys show up? Emily knelt down to meet her daughter's gaze. No, sweetheart. Just people trying to figure out what is happening. She brushed a stray lock of hair behind Sophie's ear. The crowd continued to swell, and suddenly, Emily spotted a familiar face at the edge of the throng, a woman she recognized from the neighborhood. Lila, the local florist, looked equally frantic, glancing back and forth between the crowded chaos and the main entrance as if waiting for someone to arrive. Lila. Emily called out, raising her hands, trying to peek through to see what lay beyond. What is going on? Someone passed out. The paramedics are on their way. Lila shouted back, worry creasing her brow. Everyone's in a frenzy. Claire stiffened. But what if that person needs help? And they might, Lila replied, breathless. But we can't do much without professional help. Behind them, the woman exhaled sharply, realizing the gravity of the situation, but she fought to maintain her composure. I can't leave like this, not now, she murmured, her gaze turning back to Claire. Emily held her breath. Was there a chance this moment of urgency could push them closer? As the tension electrified the air, a thought sparked in Emily's mind. Maybe this is a sign, she said quietly, willing herself to voice the hope swirling within her. Maybe facing the chaos, the fear together is what we really need. This could be a chance. But before she could elaborate further, a loud thud resonated through the room, followed by whispers of disbelief. Eyes shifted as a paramedic emerged through the throng, carrying a stretcher. Emily's heart sank. What they thought would be a moment of reconnection now felt like a roller coaster of emotions that had taken a sharp plunge. Would this be a night of healing, or a night of more questions than answers? The scene was unraveling in ways she could never have foreseen. As the paramedics rushed to the fallen individual, the air filled with a collective gasp. Emily looked at Claire, reaching across to grasp her hand tightly. The moment held its breath. Mom, what if it's someone we know? Claire whispered, eyes wide with fear, and Emily understood, perhaps more than ever, that the journey they were on could lead them down paths they never expected, and those paths were about to intersect in ways that would change everything. The paramedic moved quickly, the stretcher now inches from Emily and her girls. The murmur of the crowd grew soft and hushed as if the very air was listening, waiting. Claire squeezed Sophie's hand tighter, her knuckles pale under the pressure. Emily's heart raced. The reality of the situation crashed over her. What if this was someone they knew? Through the crowd, Emily glimpsed a figure lying still. Panic bubbled inside her stomach, an unsettling mix of fear and curiosity. Who is it? She muttered, half to herself and half to Lila, who stood beside her, wide-eyed. I don't know, Lila replied, her voice shaky. I was talking to her just a few minutes ago. She seemed fine. Just then, a younger man emerged from the crowd, pushing aside bewildered guests. Emily recognized him instantly. It was Andrew, the waiter from the gala. His face was pale, a sheen of sweat glistening on his forehead. Emily. He called out, his voice breaking through the tension. It's Mrs. Thompson. Claire gasped softly. Mrs. Thompson? Our neighbor? Emily's heart dropped. Their kind, elderly neighbor who always shared freshly baked cookies and stories from when the neighborhood was just a field? No, yes, Andrew continued, his breath ragged. Someone called for help. She fainted. The paramedics are here now, but we need to make space. Fear gripped Emily as memories of Mrs. Thompson flooded her mind. Her warm smile, the way she winked at Sophie and called her my little sunshine. Emily felt Sophie tremble beside her. What if something happens to her? Claire whispered. What if she's really sick? The ache in Emily's chest tightened. This all felt too familiar. The sudden chaos, the fear of losing someone close. But before she could respond, the paramedics began their work. Shouts bounced off the walls as they called for more hands to help form a path. Emily stepped forward instinctively. Here. We can help. She reached for Claire's hand with her other, wanting to keep her girls grounded amidst the chaos. As the crowd reluctantly parted, Emily found a moment of clarity. This could be a turning point. She could be here fully present, not just in the shadows of her spiraling thoughts about her own life, but a part of something bigger, something real. Just breathe for me, okay? she said gently to her daughters, though she hoped her own heart would follow suit. The paramedics worked swiftly, their practiced movements precise. Lines of tension gripped the crowd, concern etched on every face as they exchanged glances, hoping for good news. Emily's chest tightened with each heartbeat. As the medics assessed Mrs. Thompson, a low murmur rose around them. "Come on, come on," Emily whispered under her breath. She felt Claire's small frame begin to shake, and she leaned down to comfort her. "Hey, it's okay. They're helping her." Just then, Mrs. Thompson's eyelids flickered open, revealing her gray-blue eyes, cloudy yet still filled with warmth and surprise. What happened?" she murmured, her voice fragile as summer silk. The crowd erupted in a mixture of relief and joy, a wave of exhaled breaths cascading through the room. Emily felt a rush of emotion, her own heart swelling, teetering between hope and fear. Claire's fingers relaxed their grip as Sophie cried out, "Mrs. Thompson." Her innocent voice pierced through the tension, bringing life back to the atmosphere. But then, the old woman's face shifted, her eyes searching the room, and suddenly, she locked onto Emily. "Emily," she breathed, her voice suddenly stronger. Where's Claire?" Emily's heart raced anew. The sense of connection was palpable. "We're right here, Mrs. Thompson," she replied, her eyes wide as if the moment could bridge gaps that had been there for years. The connections they had nearly lost because of fear and past had the chance to mend, right here, right now. Just like that, everything felt like it was shifting, but then a siren wailed through the air outside, loud and jarring, cutting across the hopeful atmosphere. Who would it bring with it? And as the lights from an approaching ambulance flickered through the ballroom windows, Emily's heart leaped. What other truths were waiting in this roiling chaos? Who else needed them? Emily's heart pounded in her chest. The siren's wail seemed to echo the worries bouncing around in her mind. With Mrs. Thompson awake and aware, there was a flicker of hope. Yet as she glanced outside, curiosity mixed with dread. What other troubles lay beyond those doors? Suddenly, a jolt of energy shot through the air as the medics finished wrapping up with Mrs. Thompson. Emily felt her daughters tugging at her, their faces glinting with a blend of worry and relief. "Can we go see her?" Claire asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. The urgency to comfort their beloved neighbor pulled at Emily, but the commotion unfolding just outside threatened to unravel the moment. "Let us just stay here for a minute," Emily said softly, wanting to shield them from any potential chaos as more paramedics arrived. But inside, she knew she had to confront whatever was waiting just beyond the entrance. "Who else is coming?" Lila's gaze darted over Emily's shoulder. "What if it's someone we know?" Emily steadied her breath, trying to remain calm for her girls. "We'll figure it out together." She firmed her grip around Claire and Sophie's hands, trying to protect them as the anxiety rolled through her like waves crashing on a rocky shore. As more medics poured in, they began to direct traffic. "Clear the path," one shouted, and Emily caught a glimpse of a stretcher being wheeled in. It was covered with a dark sheet, and her heart sank. This wasn't just about Mrs. Thompson anymore. "What's happening?" Sophie whispered, pulling tighter against Emily. The innocence in her voice cut through the tension, igniting a protective fire within Emily. "I don't know, sweetheart," she said, glancing down to reassure her daughter. "But we'll be okay." But even as she spoke, doubt flickered in the back of her mind. A rush of footsteps echoed loudly as a group of young adults hurried past, their faces pulled with worry. One of them stumbled, and Claire instinctively rushed forward to help straighten him. "Are you okay?" she asked, compassion shining through her lingering anxiety. "Yeah, just my brother," he gasped, pointing toward the door. "He's in trouble." His voice, strained and shaky, sent a shiver down Emily's spine. The crowd watched, a collective breath held, waiting for clarity. "Trouble?" Claire echoed, her big eyes filled with concern. "Yeah, he collapsed." "We don't know what's wrong," the young man said, his expression raw. Emily could see the fear hanging thick in the air. "He was just fine," and then his voice trailed off. In that moment, Emily felt something shift inside her. All of their worries combined: the fear of illness, the uncertainty of life. It hit her like a wave. She turned to her daughters, the weight of the world resting lightly on her shoulders. How do you explain what they couldn't understand? It's just scary, isn't it? She admitted, actually speaking the fears that had been clawing at her insides for years. People get hurt. They fall sick. But they can get help. And it's okay to be worried. Claire and Sophie exchanged glances, and Emily knew they were still processing the chaos. A young girl in the crowd burst into tears, and the collective sound of muffled concern swept through the room again. Emily's heart broke a little more with every heartbeat. Mom, what if something happens? Claire asked, her voice low and trembling, but before Emily could answer, a sharp crash of glass shattered the tension and broke through the air. Someone had knocked over a display, and the crowd erupted into whispers and gasps. In that split second, as the eyes of the crowd turned to the chaos emerging anew, Emily's mind raced. What if this change in energy was not just fear but a call for unity? What if they could elevate each other amid this storm? Let us help, Emily said, gathering her girls together. And as they stepped toward the commotion, she felt the grip of fear loosen just a little. But then, a voice called out from the back of the crowd, chilling her spine. You don't understand. Someone's life is at stake. Emily froze, her heart pounding louder than ever. What other truths were waiting to surface? What dark corners of this night remained hidden, ready to spring forth? Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing through the possibilities of what lay ahead. The urgency in the air was palpable, sparking an instinct to protect her daughters at any cost. They kept glancing back at her, their young faces painted with a mix of worry and naivete, and she felt that familiar tug at her heart. Let us move back a little, she urged softly, not wanting to show any of her rising fears. But just as she began to steer them away from the commotion, her heart sank further as she caught sight of the young man again. He was standing frozen, his eyes glued to the array of emergency activity unfolding. Is that? He murmured, pain tightening his voice. Emily turned, following his gaze to the stretcher, now visible amid the bustling medics. Part of her wanted to look away, to shield her daughters from whatever was happening. Yet, she couldn't that the crowd seemed to thicken, pressing in on all sides. Words from the voices around her twisted into a jumbled mess of panic and concern. Emily felt the urge to pull her girls close, to protect them from the heaviness of this moment, but Claire and Sophie were already edging forward, captivated by the unfolding scene. Mom, is he okay? Claire whispered, the worry etched deeply into her delicate features. I don't know, Emily replied, feeling her own voice shake. She could barely process her thoughts, the chaos around them forcing her to confront the limits of her own understanding. Then, just as Emily opened her mouth to comfort her daughters, a paramedic emerged from the crowd. Their expression was grave, an undeniable weight resting on their shoulders. When they turned toward the young man, it became clear that the world had stopped for him. Is he family? The paramedic asked, sharp yet compassionate. Yes. The young man shouted, his voice desperate. Please. What's happening? The piercing sound of his plea filled Emily's chest with a cold dread. It reminded her just how fragile life was, how quickly circumstances could change. As the paramedic began to speak again, Emily's focus shifted to her girls. Their wide eyes were fixed on the unfolding drama, and Emily knew she had to help them process the storm of emotions swirling within them. It's important to remember, she said, kneeling beside them, that there are people here who care. That they are trying to help. Sometimes, things are out of our hands, but we can stay strong together. Sophie nodded, her small hand finding Emily's. Claire's worry remained, but there was a flicker of understanding. They were learning something raw and vital, not just about fear, but about the power and weight of community. Suddenly, a scream echoed through the hall. It wasn't loud but cut through the noise like a knife, bringing everything to a sudden halt. Everyone froze, eyes darting toward the source, tension thickening the atmosphere. Emily's heart raced, and she clutched her daughters tighter. What was that? Claire cried, panic rising in her tone. "I don't know," Emily breathed, forcing herself to stay calm despite the growing storm inside her. "But we need to keep close to one another." Another paramedic emerged, their face shadowed by urgency. "We need everyone to step back. Please." They called out, announcing a shift in the scene that brought a sense of escalation. Emily's heart sank deeper. What darkness had they stumbled upon tonight? "Stay close," she urged, pulling her daughters nearer just as the crowd began to shift with confusion and concern. Then it happened. A young girl, clutching a teddy bear, stumbled forward, tears streaming down her face. "Please. Don't take him away." The heart-wrenching plea sent shockwaves through the crowd. Emily felt her breath hitch, her chest tightening at the sight of such raw emotion. She wanted to reach out, to comfort not just her own daughters but this girl too. But just as she was about to step forward, she noticed the paramedics looking back toward the stretcher. Her chest tightened with a new realization: these moments were interconnected, tied together in ways they hadn't felt before. "Mom, we have to help," Sophie exclaimed, her innocence pushing against the weight of fear surrounding them. Emily's heart raced, torn between her desire to shield her girls and the pressure to respond to this unexpected call for action. "Yes, we do," she whispered, determination flaring inside her. "We'll help however we can." As they stepped back toward the chaos, she felt the tension rise yet again, but this time something different flickered within her, the spark of hope. United, they might just find a pathway through this storm. Would their small acts of compassion change their reality tonight? As they advanced, Emily couldn't shake the dawning question lingering in her mind. What would they discover about themselves in the process? The air crackled with tension, the crowd swirling with uncertainty and fear. Emily tightened her grip around Sophie and Claire, anchoring her daughters in this wave of chaos. Everyone was staring toward the stretcher, locked in a collective moment of anticipation. The woman who had so suddenly reappeared in their lives watched closely, her eyes betraying a mix of longing and regret. "Keep your eyes on me, girls," Emily urged, her voice steady despite the rapid thud of her heart. "We're okay together. Remember that." With each reassuring squeeze of her hand, she hoped to transmit strength, the way a mother should. Then the paramedics moved, raising the blanket from the stretcher slightly to reveal "No, it can't be," Claire gasped, and for a moment, Emily's own breath caught in her throat. "It's okay," she murmured instinctively, even as dread wove through her thoughts like a dark shadow. But the paramedics were already at work. They directed traffic, bustling with urgency as they entered and exited. "Is he your brother?" the paramedic questioned, breaking the pause that connected fear with hope. "Yes," the young man shouted, panic mingling with desperation etched into his features. "Please, God, just save him." Empathy engulfed the crowd, holding them like one giant, trembling heart. Emily felt it too, the shared anguish that poured from everyone present. People whispered words of comfort, their voices dipping in volumes, crisscrossing through the room, weaving new connections with each shared breath, and in that moment, clarity washed over Emily. "This is it," she thought. "This is what we've all been missing. What if we join together?" she said softly, leaning close to her daughters, letting them absorb her resolve. "What if we become a support for one another, just like this crowd?" Sophie looked up, her wide eyes reflecting bravery that belied her age. "Like a team?" Claire added, catching on, her spirit lit with the kind of hope that only comes from innocence. "Yes, exactly." Emily's voice chimed like a bell, clarity sharpening her resolve. "We could form a circle of love right here in this moment, wrapping everyone together in care." Each heartbeat shouted to be seen. Every person represented a story, a longing for connection, and a chance to rise above the weight of their pasts. The realization dawned with intensity. Their experiences, her estranged sister and mother, even the chaos, they all coalesced. Life was precious and fleeting, and here they stood, on the precipice of healing or further despair. The crowd began to respond. Hands linked across the space, eyes focused on the stretcher, strangers becoming allies, together amplifying hope. One person began to chant, their voice an anthem for solidarity, and soon others joined in. We are here together. We will rise together. The chant grew, energy surging throughout the room, wrapping around Emily and her girls like a protective embrace. Each pulse of sound released her from anxiety, weaving through her heart like warmth on a winter's day, a shared moment getting bigger, bolder, and just then, Emily felt a hand on her shoulder. It was her mother, apprehensive but present, weaving through the lines of people, and Claire's estranged mother right behind her, hesitant, but deeply aware of the lesson unfolding. Emily, her mother whispered, the walls of their pasts shaking like a tender vine, I want to understand. Can we all talk? The woman spoke, finally looking at Claire with honesty glimmering in her eyes. I want to move forward, for my family. Together, the weight of their histories pressed gently but firmly, urging them toward each other, toward understanding. All of them, and even Mrs. Thompson, recaptured in the love they shared, her faint smile evident amid the rising hope. Can we share the truth? Emily asked, her heart swelling with determination, unity shining as brightly as ever. Silence split her chest open as she filled it with words, the edges trimmed with vulnerability. Will you let me go with you, Mom? Yes, her mother nodded, tears spilling over, affirmation lingering in the air. Let's tell our stories. Together. And it was in that circle of compassion that they found strength. Emily felt the burden of her past lighten with every word shared, and Sophie, innocent and vibrant, remained the bridge, drawing out laughter where sadness once reigned. In the darkness that had clawed at their hearts for far too long, hope began to blossom. Forgiveness mingled with the possibility of love. Then, as if echoing their moment of connection, the sirens grew distant. The shadows that had haunted them faded under the brightness of their shared strength. Together, they began to reshape the narrative of their family, a family reborn from anguish into a tapestry woven with warmth and understanding. Life would still bring challenges, but now, they could face them, hand in hand, their hearts strengthened, intertwined like the threads of shared stories, and as applause erupted in the hall, blending with tears and laughter, Emily knew, deep within, that unity was their greatest force. They had walked through darkness into light together. At that moment, she pushed fear aside, taking in the joy blooming within her family and community. No walls remained, only a commitment to understanding and love carried them forward into the night that it was a turning point, a new beginning, and as they stepped toward that unknown horizon, emboldened by strength, Emily felt fear evaporate. She promised herself to fight for love, together. So, are you ready to keep stories like this alive? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories, leave a like now to feed the algorithm, comment your reactions and feelings about the ending, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.